in my experience, sometimes kind of the breakthrough for the QR code, because if you go to a restaurant now, often you have to scan a QR code to make sure that you can register that you were there for the contact tracing or for the menu. So from that perspective, it's a little square box which is basically a link to a website. But it's also catering to a double audience. If you look at the developer portal, we really cater to two audiences. On one hand, indeed, these business developers that want to develop their business, really, and that are also looking for tangible examples. Make sure that you do something that is really close to their experience, close to the customer experience, and often that is something that you cannot do alone. That you go into partnerships, that you try things together with other companies in order to show, this is something that is viable.
Hello and welcome everyone to this edition of the API Resilience Podcast. Today we have Katrien Van Gijsel, and I know that I butchered your name, Katrien. I'm sorry about that. Katrien is the Business Innovation Manager at KBC. And over the past 10 years or so, Katrien has made a journey through the innovation landscape, starting from innovation in traditional banking, going to data and innovation strategy, and finally today landing and bringing innovation in practice, which you can experience in their new developer portal, developer.kbc.be, which is really interesting. And I hope we get to some of the things that you've done on that portal. So welcome, Katrien. Thank you for joining us today. And of course, Christophe Van Thoma is my co-host. And it's good to see you, Christophe.
Likewise, Mark. Good to see you too. And thank you for the introductions.
You're welcome.
So I'm super excited. I almost always say this when I start a podcast, but I'm really, really excited now because I've been looking at the dev portal, the KBC dev portal, and you're doing something very different. And it just fits in my mental model of where the industry needs to go. So it's like perfect because, it confirms my, what I think that we need to be doing. And I'd love to talk with you about how that got to be and how you got there. But I'll give a short description of what you're doing differently. So KBC's dev portal, unlike most dev portals out there, is not an API only dev portal. I think it's actually an interface portal, or it's a developer portal, but not just for APIs. And it has also other affordance. Well, it's not affordance. It also has other interfaces that allow less technical people to make integrations and to create journeys for their customers. And I love it. Because it's I think I've been thinking a lot about where do we need to go? How do we get better business alignment? Because I think, it should be about business alignment. Like we need to make money for our businesses. And I think this is the way for it. So I would love to hear the background of that, Katrien. And thank you very much for coming on and having this talk with us.
No worries. Happy to be here. Well, I think if you say, where has it been coming from? We can go later into, the different types and so on. But if you really want to know where it all came from, it's actually very much linked with our strategy as KBC, where we say as in KBC Belgium, in the open banking and the open and beyond banking landscape, which of course, for most of us in the industry, has been triggered or has been sped up by PSD2. Actually, we say, we say actually in business in Belgium, we have 3 Bs. One is that we have to be personal and instant, which means we have to make sure that we have to give our customer as fast as possible a good answer that is relevant for him at that moment, or even proactively provide something that is relevant. To give an example, if you say, for example, you want to buy a house, you want to buy that house, but you need a credit, or you need to know that you can get a credit. So it's the time to yes. So you need to know that you can get that, and then that's the personal part, and then afterwards you can get through with all the administration and so on. So that's the first B. The second B and the third B are very much linked together. We call it Be All in One and Be Everywhere. So if you talk about Be All in One, that is experience the best actually in our KBC mobile app, which is becoming more and more a platform also for non-KBC customers, where you can have where we integrate services from third parties. So, for example, you can buy a train ticket there. You can make sure that your meal vouchers are there. So there is also a lot behind. And then the third part is that we say, okay, the flip side actually of the second is, okay, if we integrate third-party services in our channel, in our distribution channel, it's also logical that we make sure in customer journeys where it's relevant that we are present in the distribution channels of others with our products and our services, that we make that possible somehow. So that if you are, for example, in a bike store and you want to buy a bike, and you want to maybe have a loan for that bike because it's a fancy speed-elect bike, that you immediately there can also make sure that you get the loan or know that you can get the loan. And if you want to do those things, that's the third part, which we call be everywhere where our customer is and where we can be relevant to them, then you have to make sure that you can somehow technically integrate, of course, into the channels of these third parties. But then you need a distribution channel also for these integration methods, to which you also refer. And that's why we said, okay, we need the developer portal. Okay, we have PSD2 with the data like everybody has, and all these APIs linked to that, because to a certain extent, we have to, but there are also, of course, business possibilities in there. That we say, okay, let's broaden that and let's really open up our vault, as we then state, or vault, or our products, our services, maybe even our skills in a later stage, that we can then offer to partners, to merchants, that they can integrate that into their service offerings, so that you can give a very relevant service, a very good experience to your client. Because basically that's what it all comes down to. That's the link also with our strategy, that we are very customer-centric, and in that way we can serve our customers better. So that's actually where the developer portal fits in high level.
And it's the developer intent that is, and I think this is what is going to have to change. Like right now, we're building APIs that are having some general purpose, and then we need to go and look for, like, what can you do with this API, and you can figure out what are the affordances of this API, like what is possible with it. But I think what you've done is, like, you've taken some of the affordances that you already know, and you've developed specialized interfaces for them that are accessible also for people that are not hardcore developers. And I think that's very interesting and different.
Yeah, that's indeed a very deliberate choice. Also, it's as you say, not if you also look at the market, not every company, and definitely not every size of company, has a developer in-house or is indeed hardcore dev or wants to do everything fully digitally. So it depends really on where you are as a business developer. Mm-hmm. What you want to do, what can you do, how do you want to integrate, or do you, for example, do not want to integrate indeed fully with APIs, because that does require an effort from your side as a partner? Do you just want to get a taste of what is possible? So then we say, okay, we have these possibilities with QR codes, for example, or with widgets, which require way less developer or development effort. Mm-hmm. So that makes it possible really for everybody to integrate our services. And that's also, if you look at our intention, that we can say, okay, we can drive innovation really for a very wide scope of entrepreneurs, which we believe is very valuable for us, of course, as a company, but also for the market and entrepreneurs in general, if they want to make a difference.
In looking at your developer portal, I was really blown away by the QR codes and widgets, and I want to make sure that people understand what those solutions are. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because that speaks to kind of meeting those non-developer business people, or non-software developer business people who are enabling solutions for your mutual customers.
Yes, well, it's indeed, thank you for the question, actually, because it's indeed something that we also address in the developer portal, that we make sure that we have a developer audience, but we also make sure that we cater to a business audience as well. So we indeed explain kind of what are these integration methods. To answer your question first, of course, you have, I think, a QR code, thanks to Corona or due to Corona. A lot of people have been confronted with it way more, and it really has been, in my experience, sometimes kind of the breakthrough for the QR code, because if you go to a restaurant now, often you have to scan a QR code to make sure that you can register that you were there for the contact tracing or for the menu. So from that perspective, it's a little square box with which is basically a link to a website, and there. If you, as a merchant, I will use the example again of a bike store, because it's something that is very practical for everyone, I think. If you make sure that there is a flyer with a QR code and just some general information about a loan on the counter, and then just or a QR code, for example, with a tag to a bike, then you can scan that QR code with your smartphone immediately, and immediately come to KBC, and there you can see, okay, what would it mean if I would take a loan for this bike of, I don't know, 3,000 euros? What would it mean for me as a repayment? So what burden does it put on me? And if you say, okay, fine, this interests me, then you can go further. You can really get the loan. And basically, the widget is kind of the technical counterpart from that, in the sense that rather than putting a QR code on a website, for example, you will put a widget there, which is kind of a little window where you see, okay, well, this what is it going to be? What is the cost going to be? What is the loan going to mean? And there you can play a little bit more. So it's a little bit more integration, and you get a little bit more options as well. For example, you can play with, I'm going to repay my loan in 12 months or in 24 months. So with the time. Or, okay, well, you know, this bike is 3,000 euros, but I have 500 euros just farming somewhere, which I can invest myself. So I will just see if I can go to 2,500. So it gives you a little bit of more options to play. It's more personalized from that perspective. And there, that's then the widget. And then, of course, the API is a full-blown integration into the system of the partner, where we back and forth send information in order to make sure that you get your correct information as a client, and that it's easily done.
How did you go about discovering what widgets and what QR codes to build? Like, was that business development or like who figured this out? Because I think that the trickiest part is to figure out like what affordances are provided by your infrastructure. What is it that you can do with your IT infrastructure? And then for who is going to do that? And then what does that mean for the interfaces that you need to build? Was this a no-brainer? We're in Belgium. We're not in the Netherlands, I know, but we still have a lot of bikes, and the electric bike thing is kind of a big deal. So I can see the low-hanging fruit. But
yeah, well, it was not, of course, when we started, but it does take some time to develop. We were very visionary about Corona. So that's not true. No, it has to do with a number of things, of course. And just like in the KBC, in the all-in-one app, in our app, we have in our KBC mobile app, we have a certain number of domains that we focus upon, and it's the same in our developer portal, where we say it's based, of course, on the strategy, and in our strategy department we look at, in the midterm, the long term, what are the important trends that we should anticipate upon, and what is then important, and what is going to come up, and what is already there where we should really act upon now, and what should we start exploring. So it's from that perspective that there are also defined a number of ecosystems in which we want to be active, which are also the ones that are present really on the developer portal. So for example, one of those ecosystems is mobility, which is also a logical follow-through of actually the KBC mobile app, which I mentioned, the tickets for the train and then the bus and so on. So everything that is in the mobility area. So from that perspective, and the consumer finance for bikes is a very logical step indeed. So it's really all has to do with our strategy, because the world is our playground. we can go everywhere, but you have to choose, and you have to. It's to a certain extent, of course. If you're working in innovation, it's a guesstimate, but you also make the future. So if we say, okay, if we're going to put a lot of effort in, for example, a bike loan, or for example, supporting starting businesses that they can open easily a business account on the side of a social secretary of Xerius, then they can. Then you make also that future, and then you see that sometimes other competitors or other companies start looking at similar directions, because there is you start kind of a little wave. Like I would rather say a ripple, but then you have a ripple effect, so that's dangerous. But you start doing things, and then you see indeed that it some things pick up, some things might not pick up, or might pick up but not enough. And it's to a certain extent it's trial and error, but it's really based on, what are the ecosystems that we want to be present in, what fits with our strategy, and where can we indeed make a difference for that final consumer, which is also linked with, of course, at first instance, is there a payment due, which is logical, and credits, those first products are quite logical.
So 2 things I want to highlight is that whenever we talk to people about their developer portal strategy, we emphasize the importance of the business personas, and internal and external as personas that need to be taken into account for your developer portal. But you guys have really gone a step further with it, and I think that's really awesome, because you're engaging with the business personas not just as evaluators of technology the way that most of our developer portal users might do. You're engaging with them as in the same way you engage with developers. You're enabling them with solutions, and that's one of the things that I think you guys have just taken it a step further than others. The second thing I wanted to amplify is all along as you've been talking and in previous conversations that I've been able to have with KBC, I've seen that you're very much involved in reducing friction for your users. The solutions that you're talking about right now, these business developer solutions, are about reducing friction and making it easier for those people to and your mutual customers to do business with KBC. And so, to me, that's just fantastic. And it's definitely having that perspective. I think those 2 things together make you guys really innovative in what you're doing. So kudos. I think it's really, really great.
Thank you. Yeah, but I think it's quite right what you say. Indeed, but it's also catering to a double audience. If you look at the developer portal, we really cater to audiences. On one hand, indeed, these business developers that want to develop their business really, and that are also looking for tangible examples. If you talk about APIs, or if you talk about integrations into their systems and so on, for a lot of business owners or business developers, it doesn't really speak always. So from that perspective, we try to make sure that we cater them with examples, what we have done already, what it could be, to also give really just inspiration, where we also cooperate with external partners, with our expert board, to really make sure that they can feel what it could mean for their business as good as possible, as good as we can. On the other hand, you have indeed that developer audience, which you also have to make sure that you pamper or cater to their needs. So you make sure that indeed, their all the technical information is there. But in our belief, it also goes further than just the technical information. It's also about the onboarding experience for the developer. If they want to start using your portal, how frictionless, Mark, as you say, how does it go? How can we support? What is needed? So everything there, it's also about reporting. What have you done? How is it going? If you give us feedback, on how to improve, can we improve that? Can we give you that feedback on, well, thanks for that information, we've improved this or that. So, and to us, a developer portal it's not just indeed about the APIs, it's both the business as the tech side, but also around it, it's the servicing really around it. That's something that I believe we do not have yet, and that is definitely something that we want to work further upon towards the future.
It's a lot of work, and I think that the hardest thing is like Michael. Well, two points to this. Michael Meng, a professor that we've been collaborating with from Merseburg University, he's done this research on how do you deal with it when some developers don't have the context that they need to be able to do their job, and then other developers have more context? How do you, like, what happens if you then give them more information? Like the one that has the context, you give them too much information because they already know this and they don't need to see this anymore. And then the other one, which actually needs that information, where you might like skip it and hide it somewhere else. It's a really tricky problem, and you would almost need to start doing personalization or something like that to be able to address it. But it gets kind of squeezy, and the other thing is with developers. I had this was Matthew Ravel from Hoopy. I was in a discussion with him about this, and he said, "Yeah, but be careful because finally developers have this place that they can call their own, like the developer portal." Like, don't take away the software developer experience from them. Like, don't make it yet another marketing site. Yeah. And there was another one was like, oh yeah, actually. So it's and that's a hard balance. And I think most of our customer, like what we've seen with most of our customers through the relations that we've had with companies, we see that typically it falls a lot on the business, on the technical side, and not as much on the business side. And it's interesting, you have taken a different balance, it's still, the technical stuff is still there, but there's also a very strong business balance. And that's, different and interesting and exciting.
Yeah, and there's even a third one that we're leaving out of the equation currently, which is the agency. And we've had discussions about it, and in the end, it's the business developer that will take the decision. However, if, for example, you have a developer who has worked with our portal and who has integrated some of our services for, I don't know which partner, for a partner, and it was a lousy experience, they will have impact on that business developer. So it's very important that indeed, Ali, that you balance that, and that also even agency is there. They develop for a number of clients, for a number of business owners, that you make sure that for them it's also a good experience and that it's worthwhile, because they might also be the one who say, don't go there, don't work with KBC, it was a lousy experience. Yes. Or they might be the one that say, I've done this for a client of mine, and it's actually something that is also interesting for you, which is, of course, like kind of like a dream come true if you look at what we're doing. And we're very lucky we had by now already one developer that indeed did that, so that you can have kind of a flux from developers towards business developers that can say, okay, this is something interesting for you that I've seen that I've done for a different client. Take a look there. They can see what the business solution is, and they know, okay, I already have my login and so on, so I can do that for you.
That's like the hidden persona, because I hadn't thought about that persona yet. I'll explain a little bit more, because agency. So basically, and it's kind of stupid because this is the reality, right? Yeah. When you're a small or medium-sized company, you don't have a lot of developers on staff, so you hire somebody to do the integration for you. Their experience is still a different persona. And catering to them and making sure that they have a good experience is super important, because they're potentially an amplifier for a bunch of other businesses. That blew me away.
Yeah, that's indeed, it's also because you make sure, and it's in the end, we also dream, of course, of the fact that indeed, as you say, rightfully, Christophe, and not everybody has developers on their shelf. But if you make sure that you can also attract business developers to your portal, and you give developers that have already worked for you or that you can vouch for, if you give them also a place there that you can say, if you need a developer, you can get into contact. No strings attached from us, but these are people you can get into contact to, then it's also worthwhile for those developers to use that and to eventually reuse that. And that is also something that we can then give visibility to developers that have worked with us and that have, because typically for first integrations, it's not a walk in the park. It isn't. We also have one of the last things actually that we have as an integration method is that we make a tool really for the business owner, and that we make that tool and it is our tool. So that's something that we're also working upon for accountants, for example, like a partner hub. So we do the integration in our own partner hub for the interface of our API. So we basically eat our own dog food. So we know it's not always, blue skies and daisies. But from that perspective, if you invest into that, you can also get the fruit from your work from that perspective. And to come back on your tech developer experience, actually, we had very recently from InnoPay, their open banking monitor. I don't know if you've seen it.
I think I have seen it pass. I think I've looked at the summary, but it's a little while ago. This was probably before the holidays, I think.
Yeah, well, it's actually something. It's interesting because there is a matrix where on the x-axis you have the developer experience, and on the y-axis you have the functional scope. So the richer your API scope is, the higher you go, the better your experience is for the developer, the more to the right you go. And we thought indeed, because as you say, we cater to a double audience, and we have to make sure that the developer experience is good, but we have to balance somehow. So we thought that we would score better actually on the number of APIs that we're also still putting in, but not that good yet on the developer experience, because we believe there is still a lot of margin for us. But so we were very happy actually that in the scoring actually we came out as leaders in experience, as they call it. So way more to the developer experience than to the functional scope. Well, it's based on May. So since May, we have put a number of things back or extra on the portal. But still, that we score already that high on the developer experience is something that does make us happy, and is indeed will remain always important.
Yeah. Good.
As we talked about these different developer journeys and combining business users and business developers in your audience for the developer portal, it's kind of this fine line that you have to walk on. The user experience is a little bit like progressive disclosure in a UI, where you don't overwhelm users with all of the possibilities. You show them if they don't know that they're there, and as they learn to use them, they see more and more richness there. And I also wanted to comment that it's your solution development and exposing those possible solutions is really critical, because when people are coming to a developer portal to understand what they can do, it's not good enough just to have a list of your APIs and what the APIs do, because that is a little, I liken it to trying to learn a language by being given a translation dictionary. It doesn't really help them. It's just a bunch of words, but showing the way through those solutions is really, really instructive and helps people understand the possibilities.
And I think there's two types of content that help with this, but I'm not sure yet how do you expose that in a way that it's going to make the portal more accessible. I think one is the guides that show what can you do with an API, or what can you do with all the APIs on a portal. Like how do I do XYZ? And the other one are worked examples that show an end-to-end journey of like some complexity that shows like the full dream, like become our customer. And this is all the awesome stuff you can do with us. Yeah. But I think one of the keys is going to be, I don't know, maybe we need like a solutions catalog or something like that to live next to the API or the interface catalog that talks about all the affordances, no matter what interface is affording it. So that, it might be that one interface, or like, for example, checking if you can get a loan. You can do that probably in three ways. So you could use the QR code, you can use the widget, or you can use this API. But this API is much more general, and it doesn't allow you only to check if you can get a loan. It also allows you to actually get the loan and all these other affordances that this more general interface allows for. And then mapping those stories of capabilities that you have into the different interface elements, so that a business developer can look at it like, well, I don't need a developer because I can just use this QR code, or I'm going to use a developer in this case because this is going to give me better integration.
Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, I think it's what we do have we have also a page leading also towards our developer portal to give some more general background on, for example, on PSD2, but also on testimonials, for example, from a company that we've worked with. For example, if you look at a team leader that has integrated our on-demand financing solution, so basically that you in the CRM system can finance invoices immediately. They have integrated it, and they are now we're working on it, of course, and they're using it. And they've indeed shared their experience. It's in a vlog that in an interview with Magali Dereux, that they've shared that experience. So that's indeed something that's a first step towards that, I believe. Making sure that you have from companies or from developers testimonials on, what have we done? How have we been integrating it? What is it? Not just, if you look at Sirius, for example, where you have the business account, not just a link to a website, but really, how have I experienced it? What were the hiccups, and what was going well? So from that perspective, I think that's something that we definitely have to build upon, and that we have to make sure that there are more things like that, not just for business sides, but also for developers. I believe we've been discussing it as well, that you can kind of have some a number of source and predefined code and so on. So for a number of things that you can say, okay, this is typically how it is done, that you can provide that code and then it just, bootstrap, copy, paste, and you're there. Or indeed, if you have to solve a certain crack and nut, solve a certain more complex problem, that you give kind of like instruction videos, like this is a way how you could work with it as a developer, so that you see indeed more upfront rather than already going into it, but that you see upfront indeed, what is the difficulty of integrating this API or this widget or whatever, so that you can assess better, both as a business developer or as a developer or as an agency, what is the cost going to be? What is it going to cost me, and what do I expect in return? Of course, if I can improve my customer experience, give an immediate offer and so on to my client, what is the investment that I have to do, so that we can make that also clear and tangible.
Apologies to UI designers everywhere. This may be a terrible idea, but I love the idea of the solutions catalog, and I'm imagining an implementation of the catalog on one column and the APIs on another column, and you can reverse them. So if you want to look at APIs and see what solutions incorporate that API, you could see that. And if you flip it back the other way, you look at solutions and it selects the APIs that are used to deliver that solution. To me, that's a really the idea of having that kind of catalog that connects the two seems to be very powerful.
Cristiano Beda calls it building blocks. Like, what APIs do you use together? And then do you have SDKs for those APIs that you're using together to simplify that journey? And then do you have tutorials about those SDKs so that people got? It's a lot of documentation. It's just, you're never done. It's just...
No, luckily.
Yeah. But I think the thing that makes me really excited is the ability for surprise. Is like I've said this a while ago. I said in some presentation I said this, that if you're not being surprised by what people are doing with your APIs, something's wrong. So like you have to have and I'm not talking about the more constrained interfaces like the QR codes and the widgets. Like there you have a very well-defined use case. But ideally, you also have more open-ended interfaces that people can play with and do creative things with, and repackage your data for some new capability that makes something new, completely new possible.
Yeah. That would be very cool. No, definitely. And it's also, we have, as you know, Christophe, we also have an expert board where we interact with developers and with more tech people and so on, to get their view on what we are doing to improve, which is extremely valuable for us, that we can cooperate with them and. It's and also for them together. I hope it's also. I believe it's also very valuable. And there are indeed sometimes coming suggestions, questions from them that we did not think about, which is, well, on the one hand, it's good that you're surprised. It's very good, but it's also logical because we are in this big company. Okay, fine, we're at the forefront of innovation, but still. We are in a company. We try to look with an outside view, but we cannot always because you're just in the company. So getting that outside view and being triggered by questions and by solutions that you did not think about with what you have there, or with questions that they say, if you give me just a little bit more of information or of data or of, I don't know what, we could do something like this, and that would be really interesting for you, for a customer, for us. So from that perspective, that definitely, that's something I, to use your words, I expect to be surprised. So it would be disappointing if we wouldn't be, because
That also talks to what you said earlier, that you start moving in the space, you start moving in the markets, and the ripples that you cause reflect on others, and it changes the market. Yeah. This is complex adaptive systems, right? We're in this highly interdependent interactive ecosystem where whatever we do changes what other people do, and you can't predict what's going to happen. So this illusion of the experts completely evaporates, because you can be the first learner and you can be the one who's on the forefront, innovating and figuring things out, but even they are not experts because they cannot tell you what is going to work, because it's changing all the time.
But they are experts sometimes in just trying things out. And making that step and doing those things, rather than the sitting duck who looks at everything going by and then thinking, okay, I will do that as well. But going through that learning period, going through that learning curve, actually trying things out, putting yourself, going at a limb, putting yourself, as we do now, and we go out with actually our developer portal, which from our perspective, and I think that it is also still an MVP, it's still a minimal viable product, and we want to make it a lovable product, of course. But putting yourself out there and saying, okay, it does not have to be perfect, but at least we are addressing a request, a demand in the market, and going there and doing that is something that I believe is is important. And I'm also a very high believer of open innovation. So making sure that you say, okay, rather than going into a box, developing 3 years, and then putting something, look, this is perfect, which might be a misfit. You never know, it might be.
Most likely it will be.
Yes. And then here we're saying, okay, we put something out, which is not perfect, we know, but it's something that we can already work with, and together we can improve this. And by doing that, you give ideas and you get ideas. And I think it's a way more fruitful cooperation, and it's a way better, a better way of together creating a future that is valuable for all.
So I'm really interested in this because part of the goal of this podcast is to help encourage people in these difficult times to persevere with their API programs and their attempts to innovate. And you're describing the model that we hope to encourage people with, which is now is the time to invest, and waiting is not really an option. The world is changing around us. We don't know how it's going to change, and sitting and waiting for it to stop changing is a mistake. And the right thing to do is to keep going. Can you talk about what it is about your culture that allows you guys to be innovating, and what can other people learn from that so that they can become an organization that's willing to take a risk and to try something new and to iterate on it instead of going off to the back and coming back later with something that is essentially a copy of what is already out there?
Well, yeah, it's culture is a difficult thing sometimes to explain. It's also a difficult thing to influence. I believe it's within KBC already for years that we have, which is supported and driven by senior management, because otherwise it doesn't work, to really be innovative and to go to the our management is very aware of the fact, indeed, that if we indeed do the sitting duck, or as our CEO calls it, the dead man walking scenario, if we don't change in a changing world, we will be definitely as KBC, which is on a global scale, not such a big bank, not to say rather a mid-cap, to say it like that, that if we do not change, that we will be intermediated and we will be become a commodity, and we do not want to become a commodity, because we believe that the most important thing that we deal in is the trust of our clients. And if you are just a commodity behind some distributors, you cannot earn that trust. So it's very important to be close to that customer, to make sure that you know what they want. And that is indeed something that repeatedly is the red wire through what we do and what we develop. And then there is also the drive that has been initiated by a number of initiatives in the companies, like sometimes some internal contest or inspiration days where you say, this is what's happening in the world. Look outside and make sure that, go now back to your place and think about it and try to see, what, even in my little box, what could I change? And then also asking people, what are the ideas that you have that you believe we should do? And then the power of all these people working in your company is enormous. To give a very recent example that personally I liked a lot about how we're dealing now with culture and cultural change and innovation and digitization and everything around it. We had our group inspiration day, where we say, okay, for the entire group of KBC, so the different countries, we come together virtually, but there was a contest before, which was called KBC's Got Digital Talent. So the question was really towards everybody within the group, so Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Belgium, Ireland, Hungary, Slovakia, everybody, not for KBC, not during working hours, but did you do something digitally that you're proud of and you want to show? And then it's in a contest, that you can be rewarded for that. So make a movie, say what it is, make a movie, and it's enormous what people do and can do outside of working hours, and the talent that is indeed in the company. And if you can foster that talent, if you can bring that up, if you can applaud people for that, then indeed that gives us drive to make sure, okay, I'm also going to do that in my work, because indeed it's something that is good for me. It's something that I also like often. So typically I am good at that. And then if you can make sure that the company can also benefit from that, it's very rewarding. And if you can foster a culture like that, that's something I believe that has been indeed with a lot of support from our senior manager, management that has been invested in a lot, apart from, on the other hand, it's on one hand it's inspiration, on the other hand it's really, blood, sweat and tears, making sure the job is done and going for it and delivering, and making sure that that goes and that it's delivered and that it's not postponed or whatever, and that you really make it happen and that you see results.
Were you also the one who, well, this is touching on how do you sell this to senior management? Like, how do you get them to see the dream and to pony up the cash for these programs? So, like, were you the one who developed the business case for the developer portal at KBC?
No, I was not.
Okay.
No.
Because I'm one of the things that I'm curious about is, like, how do you tell the story to senior management so that they will understand it? Like, how do you, and this is something I'm very busy with right now, is trying to figure out, like, what's going to be the CEO story, and how will they understand this potential? And I think we are still talking way too technical about this. Like, we're already, as an industry, I'm talking now about the API industry, like, we're already talking about, don't make it a project, make it a program. Make your APIs products. Don't see it as something transactional, but look a little bit further. But I think the full breadth is still not clear. Like, this, one thing I realized is that most business owners look at an API program like a final capital good thing. So I'll explain. So they look at it like an ice cream making machine. So I'm going to install this ice cream making machine. It's going to churn out ice cream, and I'm going to make a bunch of money, like selling ice creams. And yes, part of the APIs are like that. They're ice cream machines that are going to give you income. But then another big chunk of APIs, and I would even argue the most interesting set of APIs, are more like intermediate capital goods. They're like the engine that goes into the ice cream making machine. And if you can be part of that engine, you can be part of the value chain, and you can have a much bigger amplification if you can, like, find the right piece to make, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't think senior management really gets this yet. Is that also your perspective? You don't have to say it about your management, just general from an industry perspective. So,
No. I like my management. I'm very happy actually with my management to say. No, but I think you're right, and I like your analogy with the ice cream machine. First, it reminds me a lot of when we started the journey of the importance of data within a company. They're also, especially if you look at business managers, they're really in really business. And then you come and data will change your life. And they're like, yeah, right. Okay, what are you going to tell me that I do not know from my client? So it's a lot of jabberwocky for them, and they don't see that really. So it's on first instance you have to a certain extent show them the money. What is really in there. So show them the ice cream, so that you make sure that you do something that is really close to their experience, close to the customer experience, and often that is something that you cannot do alone. That you go into partnerships, that you try things together with other companies in order to show, this is something that is viable. That is something that, if we go if we partner up and we use this, because basically it's about APIs is about sending data back and forth to partners. If you together you can show, okay, this is something that is viable for us, viable for the partner, that you can indeed make money, make ice creams out of it. That is the first step. And I think if you can do that, show the ice cream, let them taste it, preferably a very good taste with vanilla from Madagascar, of course, then you can go into the engine. And then you can say, okay, we also have certain skills, certain things that we are good at that could be interesting for our clients and that we could also offer. So then you start, removing the outer, the ice cream box, to state it like that, the ice cream machine box, and going in there and say, this part of the engine could be very interesting for some of our partners as well. So there also that could be valuable. But you really first have to give them the ice cream.
And it's true. It's very true. But what I'm worried about when I see this is that it sets an expectation, like it sets a profit expectation. And if that is not immediately fulfilled, you might be in trouble as a program owner. So that's one. Oh, there's some feedback. We're okay?
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
an echo. Yeah. So I see most API programs starting from this perspective. Mm-hmm. Sell the ice cream machine, explain like this is just another digital product. Mm-hmm. You're going to make money. Okay, here's some cash. Go do that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it works. And then it's fantastic because then you can land and expand. But I think there's also a danger, because if if nobody buys the ice cream, they're in trouble. And then the behind laying value of this whole program, which is about so much more. It's about adaptivity. It's about digital proximity. Mm-hmm. It's about, not being left behind. That also gets thrown away if the profit doesn't materialize. Yeah. So I wonder, I don't know. I wonder, it just feels like we need like an ice cream story that we can tell senior managements like, so, just that you understand, this is where we're starting. Yeah.
Yeah. And that there are different flavors of ice cream in the world.
And I'm going to sell ice cream for you, but here's all the other stuff. And this is the real goal.
I do believe, I do believe that if you are able to show senior management the ice cream, that they are going to ask themselves or come to the conclusion, what is underneath the ice cream? How are you doing this? So from that perspective, if you manage in selling the ice cream, I'm not that afraid. Yeah. Also from my previous experience, once you make sure that the ice cream is there and that it's sold and that people like it and that you have been able to broaden your scope to a number of flavors, they're going to ask, but what is underneath the ice cream? Is there something still in there? You're talking about senior management. They're not idiots. It's about managing risks also. If you say, okay, go with the machine and just break down the machine and just take something that you think is really cool, but you don't have anything to fall back upon, that you say, okay, this did work or this did not work. So from that perspective, you first have to do the groundworks, and then indeed, that risks lowers also for them in their head, and you're able to go a step further. But if you go full blown with both the multiple flavors of ice cream and the machine breaking down, then the risk of shooting wrong is way too big.
Yeah, I think part of what I hear you explaining is, I think Christoph was getting at the fact that there is a lot of strategic value in a good API program, and that it doesn't immediately translate to income and profits, but you still need to do it because it's strategic. And then, just looking at it from a pure product perspective that's going to make money, that's a tactical vision. And so you're saying that in developing your API program, you really have to address both.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make sure that they understand the strategic importance, but also offer them that tactical ice cream taste.
Yes, absolutely, Mark. Yes, I think that's fully right. You have to have the dream, this is where we could go to, and this could bring an enormous amount of value for the company, both in money as in, being future-proof and being at the forefront of innovation and everything that goes with that, which is both very important for today and for tomorrow, basically. But then you have this big dream. The question is, what is your first step? What are we going to do first? And what could we do second if that is successful? And what if we fail? What is our B scenario? So that you kind of have that dream, but also that path leading to it. And the first things you're going to try, and the first things you're going to realize, and that you're going to say to your management, my dear management, this is still my dream, or my dream has shifted a bit based upon my experience, which is even more likely. And we have tried, as we agreed, we have tried vanilla, pistachio, and raspberry. And vanilla and raspberry is really working well, but pistachio, which we expected to be really good, did not work that well. So we have to change there somehow. So indeed, if you look at an API program, you have to have your dream, but you also have to have in that API program itself the necessary flexibility so you have still that business fit.
Perfect.
I think.
Makes total sense. And I think it's like sell the strategy with the tactics. But I think you also have to start selling the strategy from day one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing, we're getting close to needing to wrap up from a time basis. But the other thing that I really like about the KBC story is that while there were regulatory changes that you were responding to, you took that as an opportunity. And instead of just going with compliance, you took that as an opportunity. And what you said earlier is true about culture. It's really hard to describe and define culture. Sometimes you don't even know what's part of your culture, because it is unspoken and it is not codified somewhere. But several of the things that I want to recognize from your discussion about innovation and what you've been doing is the fact that you've got a culture where creativity and looking for possibilities is embraced, and you have a culture that supports experimentation and will tolerate some failure.
Yes.
And people always want innovation, and they say, but we don't want failure. If you don't have an organization that is tolerant of any failure, then they're going to be slow moving dinosaurs, and we know what happened to the dinosaurs. Part of it wasn't their own fault, of course, but in order to innovate, you have to change. Yes. And you have to make change part of your process. And I think that you've talked about some very important factors at KBC that have allowed you to be successful and so innovative, because it's, again, people need to go check out your developer portal because it's really cool.
Yes, please do. Yeah, but it's just to come after that, just as a last point, I think if you look at an organization as a living organism, which it kind of is, where you have your different programs and so on, living organisms only learn by doing and failing. It's like raising kids, which a lot of people can relate to. If kids cannot make mistakes, they're never going to learn how to walk or how to do something. And it's the same. And you have to tolerate, you have to take into account the risk as well, of course. And you have to, you cannot tolerate failure into the, I don't know what, to the 10th degree or something like that. But there has to be, in order for people to move, there has to be the option that you can fail. Or that you say, okay, maybe it was a learning and we can try again and we will do better and we will get there. Yeah.
It's that learning path. And I think this is what makes organizations unique, is that path that they took to get where they are. And I think that two organizations might have the exact same program, exact same APIs putting them out, but the way that they've gotten there will influence and inform how they're interacting with people, how, like, what's going to happen after that. And I think that path and that learning is almost as important as the interfaces themselves, because that is shaping the organization and the culture that is going to help you to, be more future-proof even than, just by the APIs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the safest place for me right now is sitting on the sofa watching TV. But if I do that for very long, that's a local optimization that over the long term is the worst thing for me. So, in the same way, I think with API programs, with innovation, businesses have to get off the couch and be active. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind and they're going to get out of shape. That may be too simplistic.
Thank you very much, Katrien. This was a really, really awesome discussion. It sparked a bunch of ideas, and I'm just really happy that we can share these thoughts and having you on talking about them, because I think it will open up a different perspective. That's really important to have, I think.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your experiences with our listeners. I hope for our listeners that you've been inspired by this conversation and you've got some ideas that you want to try. I know, for one, I'm going to be very interested in seeing what you do next at KBC, and thank you very much for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the API Resilience Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please follow us to hear our latest episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And if you have any comments or feedback you would like to share, please drop us an email at podcasts@pronovix.com. Until next time, we wish you well and hope you find success in all your endeavors.